Hi,
Meghan, in the middle.
Meghan Markle. God, having failed at making jam, potpourri and coloured water, flavoured water.
There was a moment when Meghan Markle's Hollywood comeback looked unstoppable. After years of silence, she was finally ready to reclaim her spotlight. Not as a duchess, not as a royal runaway, but as a woman writing her own redemption story.
I know! I'm so happy. There's such a great crowd, and they had no idea you were here, and this is fantastic.
The cameras were rolling, the scripts were flowing, and whispers in Los Angeles studios called it the comeback of the decade. Meghan's production deal was massive, a streaming giant betting millions on her name. Every headline said the same thing. Hollywood is ready to forgive, and Meghan is ready to rise. But behind that perfect smile and those carefully framed shots, something wasn't right. The pressure, the control, the image, it all started to crack. And when a mysterious recording from her set leaked online, that dream comeback collapsed in real time.
5 billion minutes have been watched. Is that right? 45 billion as of this week.
Because what was meant to rebuild her career ended up tearing it apart. This is the story of how Meghan Markle's Hollywood return turned into a full-blown crisis, one that left even her closest allies questioning who she really was. The plan was flawless, at least on paper. Her new docuseries, I'm Meghan, was meant to be an intimate look at her life after royalty. Cameras would follow her daily routines, her charity work, her reflections on healing and resilience. It wasn't just a show, it was a statement. In the words of one executive, this would be Meghan's reintroduction to the world, raw, real, and redemptive. She arrived on set looking every bit the Hollywood star she once dreamed of becoming. Cream sweater, subtle gold jewelry, that same camera-ready poise. The crew described her as calm but commanding, meticulous yet soft-spoken. Every light had to be perfect. Every angle had to flatter. And still, it wasn't vanity, at least not at first. Meghan was obsessed with getting her truth right. After years of being misrepresented by tabloids, she wanted to control her own narrative.
So I think probably it was different several years ago.
The studio executives loved it. Fashion magazines were already drafting headlines. Meghan's comeback era, one declared. From palace to powerhouse, wrote another. For a brief moment, it worked. Hollywood was listening again. But what no one knew, not even her closest producers, was that the same perfectionism driving her comeback would soon become the reason it fell apart. Because behind the golden lighting and soft music, tension was quietly building. And the woman who once escaped royal control was now trying to control every second of her own story. At first, the set felt like a dream. Every detail had been carefully arranged. The golden lighting, the subtle background music, even the soft hum of conversation that filled the studio. Meghan arrived early, often before most of the crew. She'd walk the space slowly, studying every corner, every camera angle, making sure it all looked just right. The crew admired her at first. She was focused, one production assistant said later. She had this calm energy, like someone who'd been waiting years to finally tell her truth. But after the first week, that calm energy began to shift. There were more reshoots, more notes, more tension. Every tiny detail became a battle for perfection.
Right.
If a lighting cue was off by a second, Meghan noticed. If her tone didn't sound warm enough in playback, she'd quietly call for another take. She wanted control, not out of ego, but out of fear. She couldn't let go, another crew member admitted. Every scene had to mean something. Every frame had to say, this is who I really am. To outsiders, it might have seemed like dedication. To those on set, it started to feel like pressure. The team began whispering between takes. Was she trying too hard? Was this about art? Or damage control? No one wanted to be the first to say it aloud, but everyone felt it. Something was brewing. One producer described the mood as tense but quiet, like the air before a storm. They didn't see shouting matches or breakdowns. What they saw was worse. Restraint. Meghan would smile politely after a long day, thank the crew, and then walk away in silence. But the moment she was out of view, you could feel the exhaustion ripple through the team. By week 2, the smiles felt forced, the coffee breaks got longer, the air on set grew heavy, and the woman who once seemed in total command began to look tired. Her perfectionism became the pulse of the production, and everyone danced to it. If a scene didn't look exactly how she wanted, they'd start over. If a shot didn't feel authentic enough, it was scrapped. Days stretched into nights. The budget swelled, deadlines slipped, but to Meghan, this wasn't chaos. It was purpose. She told one executive privately, "If I'm going to be seen again, I need to make sure it's the truth this time." And in her mind, the truth was worth everything, even time, money, and patience. Still, not everyone agreed. Behind closed doors, quiet conversations began. Producers started taking calls in hallways. Studio executives asked for updates that came slower and slower. There were murmurs about creative friction, the kind of corporate phrase that really means something's going wrong. Yet, no one wanted to stop her. She was Meghan Markle, a global headline, a brand, a story in herself. So the cameras kept rolling and the whispers grew louder. And somewhere between those takes, between the quiet perfection and the mounting pressure, something inside the project began to crack. The woman who once escaped the palace to find her voice was now fighting to control every sound of it. Every word, every shot, every breath. The comeback was still alive, but barely. And no one on that set could have predicted what would happen next, that a single recording would take all of this carefully built perfection and blow it wide open.
Returning to acting for the first time in 7 years.
It was supposed to be an easy day, a simple morning routine segment. Coffee, a quick team meeting, a quiet moment in her garden. Nothing complicated. Just Meghan, being herself. But something in the air felt different. One crew member said later, "You could sense it. She wasn't angry, just tense, like she'd been holding her breath for too long." By early afternoon, the cameras were rolling again. The scene was meant to capture a reflective moment, Meghan speaking softly about healing from judgment. But as the cameras zoomed in, a disagreement started just off screen. It began small, a creative note, a question about tone. Then it escalated. The senior producer suggested keeping a short clip, a few seconds of Meghan wiping a tear from her cheek. He said it was powerful, real, something audiences would connect with. But Meghan didn't see it that way. "I don't want their pity," she said, her voice sharp but controlled.
This month here at our cottage, just a standard, typical night for us.
It's a cozy night. What were we doing? Just roasting chicken and
Roasting
having
chicken, trying to roast chicken.
trying to roast.
The producer tried again. "It's not pity, it's honesty. That's what makes this scene work." And then came the line that would echo across the internet. "It's not real if I didn't choose it." A chair scraped. Something fell. Maybe a binder, maybe a prop. Silence followed. Then the sound of the director quietly saying, "Cut!" What no one realized in that moment was that someone's phone was still recording. Not the cameras, not the studio equipment, a personal phone, hidden in a pocket. That 2-minute audio file would change everything. Within 48 hours, it was everywhere. The clip appeared first on an anonymous gossip account. Then it spread like wildfire. Where Duchess meltdown started trending within the hour. Talk shows replayed the quote on loop. Pundits debated whether she was difficult or simply misunderstood. Memes flooded social media. Late-night hosts turned it into punchlines. And just like that, the project she'd built on vulnerability became the symbol of arrogance. Behind the scenes, panic hit. Executives called emergency meetings. Lawyers drafted cease and desist letters. Publicists worked overnight to trace the source of the leak. But it was too late. The internet had already decided. She lost control of the narrative, one insider said. And for someone like Meghan, that's worse than the leak itself. Even people who had never seen a single frame of I'm Meghan were suddenly talking about it. What happened on set? Why did she explode? Who leaked it? And why? The questions multiplied faster than any answer could contain them. Inside her own home, Meghan reportedly watched the chaos unfold in disbelief. Friends said she didn't sleep that night. She scrolled through the headlines until morning, whispering the same words again and again. That's not what really happened. But in Hollywood, truth moves slower than gossip. And by the time her team released a carefully worded statement, the story had already grown bigger than any spin could fix. This wasn't just a leak, it was a revelation. The moment the world stopped seeing Meghan as the director of her comeback and started seeing her as the subject of another downfall. And what happened after the leak would turn silence into strategy and sympathy into survival. When the leak hit, Hollywood froze. What was once whispered admiration quickly turned into hesitation. The same people who'd praised her as the comeback queen suddenly went quiet. Inside the studio, meetings turned grim. Executives stared at budget sheets, watching costs rise while public trust fell. "We can't release this now," one of them said flatly. "Every minute of footage feels radioactive." The damage rippled fast. A luxury brand quietly paused a campaign. A podcast sponsor pulled its funding. A streaming partner sent lawyers to renegotiate terms. Everyone wanted distance. Even her closest allies felt the shift. A stylist who'd worked with Meghan for years stopped taking calls. A director who once called her a visionary suddenly had schedule conflicts. And the tabloids that once celebrated her independence now ran pieces with headlines like, "From Royal Rebel to Hollywood Risk." For the first time, Meghan's public silence didn't feel like control. It felt like collapse. Behind closed doors, insiders say she broke down during a late-night strategy meeting. "I tried to do everything right," she whispered through tears. "I just wanted them to see the real me." But in Hollywood, perception moves faster than truth. And the woman who'd once defined her own story now watched the world rewrite it for her. In her Los Angeles home, the mood turned tense. Every day began with crisis calls. Lawyers, PR consultants, brand strategists, all scrambling to contain the wildfire. The question was no longer, what happened, but how do we survive it? Some team members argued for silence. Others pushed for an exclusive interview to tell her side. But Meghan resisted both. "I can't stay quiet," she said, "but I can't sound defensive either." It was a paradox, the same one that had haunted her career. How do you sound authentic when everyone thinks you're performing? Her PR team drafted apology statements. Her lawyers warned against releasing anything at all. And the executives, desperate to protect their investment, debated re-editing the series. "If we cut around the emotional scenes," one said, "we can rebuild the story." Another countered, "That's the whole point of the show, the emotion." The debate grew heated. One insider described it as a tug of war between image and honesty. Meanwhile, the media frenzy refused to fade. Talk shows dissected her tone. Analysts debated her sincerity. Some fans defended her fiercely. Others called her manipulative. The project that was supposed to prove her strength had now exposed her fragility, not because she was weak, but because she dared to show emotion in a world that punishes women for it. But Meghan wasn't ready to give up. She turned to the one thing she'd always relied on: strategy. Weeks later, Meghan re-emerged. Not on a red carpet, not in a press conference, but in quiet, controlled moments that spoke louder than any headline. Photos appeared of her at charity events, smiling softly, speaking to young women about resilience. Clips surfaced of her mentoring creatives and championing female storytellers. Every post, every image, every caption was calculated. But it worked. The narrative began to shift. She gave a calm, deliberate interview. No dramatics, no tears. Just reflection. "Every mistake is part of the journey," she said. "I wanted to show my heart, and maybe that means letting people see when it breaks." Fans applauded her vulnerability. Supporters called her brave. But skeptics weren't convinced. A late-night host quipped, "She's either the most authentic person alive or the best actress Hollywood never hired." Still, Meghan stayed the course. She met with new producers, reshaped her brand around compassion and empowerment. Her team studied the data. Which clips performed best? Which messages resonated most? They built a comeback plan not from power, but from humility. "She knows she can't control everything," a close aide said, "but she can control her next move." It was no longer about image, it was about endurance. Hollywood forgets fast, but it also loves a survivor story, and Meghan was determined to become one. Now, the world waits. The cameras have stopped rolling, but the story hasn't ended. What began as a comeback has turned into a cautionary tale about image, control, and the impossible balance between truth and performance. Meghan wanted to show the world who she really was. But in trying to control that image, she lost the very thing she was chasing: authenticity. Still, her story isn't over. Because if Hollywood has taught us anything, it's that redemption is never really off the table. Maybe she'll rise again. Stronger, wiser, softer. Or maybe this was her final act, the closing scene of a story that burned too bright, too fast. Either way, one truth remains. In a world obsessed with image, being real is the most dangerous role of all. And for Meghan Markle, the cameras may have stopped rolling, but the world is still watching.